Welcome to Silberman Law Firm's Weekly Docket, episode 41, where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is October 24th, 2024, and I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the Silberman Law Firm and your host, and I'm joined by Austin Black, who is my co-host. And today we are going to do something completely different. We normally do a legal news section, a legal questions section, a rant and rave section, and it's a very formulaic show. And it's a good show, but I just woke up wanting to do something different today, Austin.
It's a good show, but we think it could be better.
Right. We're probably going to go back to our old format, but I just woke up and I wanted to answer questions. I wanted to answer some legal questions. I searched the top 20 top questions Googled in 2023 and also some kind of just not so legal questions that I wish I knew.
Although I will say one thing before we jump into the show for today, I do have a brief update on the FTC story that we talked about last week on the click to cancel thing. There already has been a lawsuit filed, multiple lawsuits filed.
Okay.
The cable industry, home security companies, and advertisers have all sued.
Dirty companies. Cable and home security does not want you to be able to.
Not want you to be able to click to cancel. No.
We want to keep people locked in and make it really hard to cancel.
Yeah,
so
not surprising, but just want to let everyone know that.
Yeah. No, that's a great update. All right. What's on our docket today as far as answering some legal questions and not so legal questions? What will we be answering today, Mr. Black?
Yeah, I'm as you said, I'm not really sure how legal some of these questions are, but first, how do you get rich? And then what is probate? Is the second question. Third question, is buying a house a good investment and not as good as buying a Corvette? What is arbitration versus mediation? How do you lose weight, keep it off, and stay healthy? But what is a power of attorney? Okay, some of these questions seem pretty straightforward, but we will let you know the answers.
And we have 3 legal questions and 3 non-legal questions, right?
Okay. We are uniquely qualified to answer every single one of these.
Absolutely. When you have a bar license, you're uniquely qualified to opine on everything.
Everything, yes.
Everything. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our first question. Okay, and the first question we're talking about is how do you get rich? And this could be substituted with generally how do you be financially successful. And let me just start out with saying, here's what it's not. All right, you're not going to get rich in some sort of gimmicky, very quick process. The odds of you doing that are statistically low. So it's not real estate investing seminars. You'll hear a lot of people, especially we practice real estate law, so we get a lot of potential real estate investors calling us up. They've taken these seminars. They're going to be the next great real estate investor. All right, that's not statistically likely.
Yeah.
All right. Private.
You know it's more statistically likely if you do that? Being involved in a lawsuit and having us represent you.
Yes. Then you will continue to help my law firm get rich. Okay. So if you do that. So thank you for that. But all right, private equity. And you get a lot of people out there. Okay. All these really rich people, they do more. You always hear, you invest in stocks and bonds, but if you're really rich, there's some secret sauce, and they're out there investing in all of these very alluring private equity investments, like going to invest in this business or this oil and gas well, or this hedge fund or this, or like on Shark. People watch Shark Tank, right? And they're pushing their products, and that's Mark Cuban is up there, and he's rich because he's investing in all this private equity. Don't need in private equity. How about starting a business? Okay. It's not a terrible idea. It's probably the least worst idea, but starting a business is hard. Owning a business is hard. You have to have a knowledge of accounting and marketing. You've got a people problem. You have limited resources. You're not going to get a stable paycheck. You may not be profitable the first 1 or 2 years. It's really hard to start and run a business successfully. So statistically, you're not doing those things is not going to make you rich. I think those are some common misconceptions. Okay.
Another misconception I'd like to briefly mention is crypto. Okay. If you have a very gung-ho friend who comes to you, and this is not from personal experience, you have a very gung-ho friend who comes to you and says, oh, this coin is going to go like 100x within the next 2 months or something. You really want to get in right now. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Not a good idea.
Crypto best case scenario could be a small percentage of your portfolio. It's not a real asset. So if you want to invest there, go for it. And these are not my original thoughts, by the way. It's real
These are Philip Silberman's original thoughts. He has told me this in confidence, and now we are sharing it to you.
Here's the secret sauce, everybody. You spend less money than you make, and you invest the savings in like an S&P 500 index fund or some other broad index fund. That's it. So you sit down, you do a household budget. If you make $100,000 a year, be sure you're spending less. The less you spend, the better. And you put it in an index fund and you forget about it, right? Every year you invest. That's all there's. And what's the support for this? The average S&P annual return was 9.75%. So almost 10% for the last 20 years between the years 2003 and 2023. If you manage to save $20,000 a year, I know that's not an insignificant sum. And I know it's hard to do that in certain situations. But if you manage to save $20K a year over a period of 20 years, you would have at the end of it, because of the power of compounding interest annually, you will have invested $400,000 and you will be worth about $1.2 million. $822,000 will come from the actual income and the compound returns. That's the most simple way to amass wealth. Now, I get it. Being a millionaire is not the same as it was many years ago. We've had inflation. Millionaires are no longer like, now we start talking about billionaires, right? But that's still pretty good. Most Americans are not doing that. You would still be considered very wealthy if you were to do that. And that's the most surefire statistical way to do it. Again, not my original thoughts. There's a guy by the name of Jack Howe. He's not paying, or Barron's Streetwise. It's a News Corp company. The same company owned Wall Street Journal, Barron's. They're not paying for this advertising. Those are most of his thoughts. It's a very common thought. He's coined the term sort of financial nudism. You don't need derivatives. You don't need options. You don't even, he goes farther. You don't even need emerging market funds. You don't need commodities. All you need is a good ETF, maybe some stocks, maybe some bond, maybe a bond ETF. Put it in there and forget about it. So
I'm glad you explained to me what financial nudism means. I thought that would have been like me starting an OnlyFans to make money.
Yeah. we may need to edit that out, but that was super funny. All right, let's move on to our next question. All right, this one is a legal one. What is probate? Austin, what's the dictionary definition of probate?
The official proving of a will.
There you go. Now, that's not very helpful, and it's actually not 100%
No, it's
correct.
not, because sometimes they're already proved. But
right.
Yeah.
Or sometimes there's no will, and you still go through probate, right? You go through an intestate probate without a probate. So in my own words, I would say probate is the process of dispersing a decedent, that's someone who died, the process of dispersing a decedent's assets. So you've got to distribute the decedent's assets after death. That's what the probate process is. And that's whether they have a will or they don't have a will. Okay. And you typically only need to probate a will if the person who died actually had assets. So poor people die all the time. They don't need probate. They just die. It's sad, but you don't need a probate. And or if you have a will and it does the same thing as intestacy law, where just the kind of the default law in your state, and maybe all you have is a house, or you just use a kind of an affidavit of heirship, you probably don't need a probate then.
And I think we've explained this before, but if you die with a will, and that will is probated, it is something different than what would have normally happened if you didn't have a will, then that's called a testate probate, testate with a will. If you die without a will, or your will would have done the same thing that the law would have done, that's called an intestate probate.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, if all of your bank accounts, think about it, probate is usually driven because you've got bank accounts, financial assets that did not have beneficiary designations, did not have payable on death designations on there. So the banks don't know what to do with them. They don't know who the money goes. And that's going to have to go through probate. So that drives a lot of our probate calls is, hey, mom and dad had a bank account, no beneficiary designation on it. So we have to do a probate to get this thing called letters testamentary, which is just a document from the court. And then the bank will recognize that and allow the executor to distribute out the assets. So that's usually what's driving the probate. All right, let's move on to our next question. So and this is a non-legal question. and this is a common misconception because of the American dream, we're talking about, is buying a house a good investment? What do you think, Austin?
No. That's
No.
why I went out and bought a 1967 Corvette Stingray.
That's a very cool Corvette if you did that. So I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for doing that. So not exactly the best way to amass wealth and get rich. It's not terrible. You can buy some cars that don't depreciate and may appreciate in value, and that would probably be one of them. All right. Is buying a house a good investment? No, probably not. And it's crazy because we're all fed this lie of it being the American dream, and much of our economy is focused on the sort of the home buying process. When you think about Home Depot and Lowe's and mortgage bankers and realtors and law firms, like real estate law firms like us, and title companies, and all of the stuff out there, insurance, all of the stuff out there that surrounds buying a house, it's very good for our economy, but it's really not that good for the individual. The repairs, the maintenance it's extremely expensive. You're replacing roofs, air conditions. You just have general upkeep. All right. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you another thing. It's really bad and even worse if you're not that handy. Are you handy at all, Austin? Can you fix that?
Yeah. And the only reason for that is my dad really was.
Okay.
And so because of that, like if a lot of times it's something he's done in the past. Like I've even changed brakes on a car with him. Okay. So like I would not at all know how to do any of that, but and I can look up things on YouTube and usually figure them out, or call him and if he has if I have a question again.
So if you're handy like Austin, you're going to have a lot less of maintenance expense. If you're just a regular person working a job, owning a house, and you're doing your best you can to save 10% of your income so you can save money and amass some wealth, you're going to be in a much worse position if you can't do things like change a faucet, if you can't do things like unclog a toilet, replacing a simple electrical outlet, okay?
Okay. Just one of those things is not like the others. If you can't unclog a toilet, you have some serious problems.
There are people that can't do that. And I own a property management company, and I see tenants call in all the time for basic stuff that they could really just go to Home Depot and get a plunger and fix.
Wow.
If those are things that you can't do, if I tell you to go get a snake to unclog your toilet and you think you don't want to handle a reptile, you really don't need to own a house.
Because do I need a flute too to charge it? I don't know.
Every time you call a plumber out, it's $300-$400. It's going to eat you up.
Yeah.
And pools are just an absolute money pit. Okay. Heaters, pool pumps, cleaners, something is always broken on a pool. Yeah. So, and in Texas, owning a home is even worse because the property taxes are so high. You never really own the home. So let's play the devil's advocate. What's good about owning a house? So Austin, any ideas on what might be a positive if you were to make an argument for owning a house, something good about it?
So I see our show notes. I would not have said this beforehand. Okay. I mean, we have written structured savings. That it forces people to save because they had to pay a mortgage every month.
Yes, and I'll expand on that. Okay, so if you buy a house, and Americans are notoriously bad savers. So going back to how to get rich, keeping some of your income and Americans are going to struggle. They just don't have the discipline to do that. They're going to want to spend. So what buying a house does do is it forces American people to save because you're usually paying a 30-year fixed, fully amortized mortgage. So you're paying a principal component. There's interest and principal as part of your mortgage payment, Austin. And when you first get the loan, the interest portion is really high, but there's still some sort of principal portion.
Yeah.
So every month you're paying principal. So that's like forcing you to save into your house. And that's why when you get to the end of a mortgage or when you paid on a mortgage for a long time, Americans end up that's their biggest asset because it's forced them to save. Now, yes, you would be better off if you just rented a home and took money and put it in an S&P 500 index fund. Yeah. But the alternative of not saving at all is much worse than buying the house. Now, the only other problem is Americans, we created these products, and in Texas, I don't think they were legal until about the mid-90s. You're familiar with home equity loans, right, Austin? It allows Americans to treat their house like a piggy bank. and they were illegal in Texas or not constitutional until about 1997, I think was the exact date. And then once Americans got equity, they get equity appreciation. They were able to borrow all that money out of the house, decimate their savings in their home, and then go buy a Corvette or go buy something else. And that's been a bad thing. Now, some people used it for good things, but it's allowed them to basically get back into that spending trap. And the idea of owning a house being a really bad investment doesn't factor in what we've had since the pandemic, which is crazy appreciation of 40 to 50% the last 2 or 3 years. That you can't really expect that kind of appreciation each year. So, all right, one more reason for buying a home. I own a home, even though it's a bad investment. It's quality of life. Okay, I've got 4 kids. I don't want to be at the whims of a landlord who might decide to sell the property or increase my rent. I want a higher quality of life. My wife wants to be able to decorate the house. She wants to be able to improve the house. So yeah, there's an intangible there to owning a home, quality of life. But make no mistake, it is not, the American dream is not about it being a good financial investment. If you've got discipline, if you've got willpower, you're better off renting.
Something that most Americans are in ample supply of, right?
Yeah, home ownership. On that note, I'm rethinking maybe we should all buy homes. All right, next question, and this one is a legal one. Austin, I'll let you take a stab at this one. What is arbitration?
Arbitration is a different conflict resolution form than litigation is. I think it really came about in the mid-2000s when this started becoming a bigger thing. And a lot of contracts nowadays, especially contracts with really big companies like your cable contract or your cell phone contract, are going to have binding arbitration provisions in there, which will state that if there is any dispute related to this contract, then you have to arbitrate it before you go to a court, right? And while in the past, that may have been a better and more expedient way to resolve disputes, at the moment, it functions much more as a deterrent to people actually proceeding with those conflict resolution methods, because it's a lot more expensive to move forward with arbitration proceedings than it is to actually file a lawsuit. Crazy.
And that's the real problem with arbitration. You've got some crazy expenses, as $300-400 to file in district court, county court. But if you want to file with AAA, which is the biggest arbitration forum, you're going to pay $4,400. And then for the hearing, the actual hearing, you're close to $4,000. So you're going to have $8,000 in fees if you want 3 arbitrators. The big takeaway here is arbitration is an alternate forum to the court system, right? We as taxpayers, we have access to the court system. We have access to justice. Now, the wheels of justice can turn very slowly. You might be in court for 1.5 years if you want to take that all the way to trial. But the idea, like Austin said, was arbitration is this great solution, and it's going to be quick, and it's going to be efficient, and it's going to be affordable. But none of that really panned out. It's probably a little bit quicker, but you can still get into some very robust discovery in arbitration. And the fees are crazy. And who this really has benefited, the arbitration craze in the United States, who this has really benefited is like business owners against big business, against small business, or big business, or business in general against individuals. And the best example of that is home builders. Anytime you build a home or buy from a home builder, you're going to submit to an arbitration agreement in the contract, and that's in lieu of access to the court system. And because those filing fees are so high, it's a deterrence to individuals filing for arbitration. So I had a company, we actually use this to our strategy. You've heard me talk about Apartment Wiz many years ago, and we were being sued under the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. And what the big strategy we employed to, in that case, or stop it from spreading, is we made all of our real estate agents sign agreements to arbitrate, and they forfeited their rights to proceed collectively. They had to proceed individually in arbitration. And the plaintiff's attorneys couldn't really take those cases in an economically efficient way because I bound them to arbitration. Austin's smiling.
Do you really want to share this, Phil? Do you want to?
Yes, because the FLSA was a crooked act and I didn't do anything wrong. And that act had been abused and I was being totally taken advantage of by perversion in the law and by plaintiff's attorneys. So I had, that case took up 2 years of my life, but that's an example of a business benefiting from the arbitration proceeding.
Yeah.
Okay, mediation. All right. Now people confuse mediation and arbitration. Mediation is you're not submitting yourself to a mandatory resolution. If you're in arbitration, it's whatever those arbitrators decide, that's what you're going with. It's really a voluntary process and you have an option to settle or not.
Yeah.
And it's the process of informally settling your dispute before that case goes to trial.
Yeah.
Now, almost all Texas judges will order you to mediation. It generally works. Have you mediated many cases, Austin?
I've mediated quite a few cases.
Do you find it to be successful in over 50% of your cases?
Yes.
Yes.
I'd say it's successful in over 90%, actually.
The figures can be that high and it works. It's just a good thing. They're very successful. A couple notes on mediation. I don't think virtual mediation works quite as well, all right, where someone's in the comfort of their home on Zoom.
Yeah.
And that's because most mediations, the way they're really successful in my mind is the parties get so exhausted in a 6 to 8 hour mediation. They've been at a mediator's office and they're just tired. And most mediations settle in that final hour. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's something to say about being there in person and wanting to go home and wanting to go eat dinner and getting to the point where you're just physically exhausted and you want to do a deal. I think that's what really pushes these things to resolution. So
yeah.
That's a little bit about mediations and the difference between arbitration and mediation, because a lot of people are getting confused on that. All right, next question, not a legal question. All right. How do you lose weight? This has been in the news. How do you stay healthy? How do you keep the weight off? And this is Ozempic stuff. Right? Let's put this up here. Here, I've got a list of some of the most popular diets. Okay, let me know if you've tried any of these diets, Austin. So a low carb diet, all right. A keto diet. I think I know what that is, but not exactly sure. Okay, paleo diet. That's like where you're going to eat like you're a caveman, I think.
That's where you eat the dogs and you eat the cats.
Just in Springfield, Ohio. All right. All right, the vegan diet. I actually tried vegan for a little while. I couldn't get enough energy.
I knew you'd tried vegan, Phil. I knew you'd
I couldn't get enough protein. Jenny Craig, I've heard of her, not exactly sure. Is that Weight Watchers? I don't exactly
I don't know, actually. I don't know. Maybe it's a I'm not sure, yeah.
All right, and now we've got Ozempic. All right, that's like what everyone does. Austin, Ozempic is like the most popular thing we're doing now. You just medicate yourself. What's the side effects of Ozempic? Do you have can you read that?
Yeah, it said nausea, stomach pain, constipation, diarrhea, vomiting, and writing bad raps, aka Drake. Sorry, go on.
That one totally went over my head. Okay, and for full disclosure purposes, I don't to avoid a defamation lawsuit. Drake, we do not have any knowledge of Drake being on Ozempic or not. I don't know. All right, Austin, that's it. Quiet, Austin. Quiet. Got to rein Austin back in. All right. So what I'm reading is they've created a drug that just makes you so sick that you don't want to eat. So,
yeah, I mean, that does sound effective.
That's very effective. All right.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a health freak. All right. And this is how I
can attest to this. Yes.
Yeah. Real simple. All right. Yeah. Real simple. And no one wants to do it because it's miserable. Absolutely miserable. All right. Here it is. All right. No, if you want to be healthy, be slim and whatever, no sugar almost ever. All right. No alcohol almost ever, because alcohol basically turns to sugar. And it's also really bad for you. It causes cancer. And
it's just poison. There are no studies that say alcohol does anything helpful for you.
Right. All right. Low fat. There are some good fats out there, but low fat is key. All right. You can't just go eat saturated fat. You can't go pound French fries ever. You can pretty much never eat fried food. All right. So you really need to stay away from ribeyes. All right. So Low fat or almost no fat. You can have some good fats like avocado, olive oil, nuts are good fats.
Mm.
All right, no processed foods, just real food. All right. So if it's been processed, if you're looking at the ingredient list and you see a bunch of things you don't understand what they are, you need to stay away from it. I heard someone say, stay out of the center section of the grocery store. Stay on the outside section of the grocery store is what you're for all the processed foods, Austin. The cereal aisles are in the center section. The bars, the energy bars, the candy bars.
But thinking about that in the grocery store that I frequent the most, and I think that would mean I'm only eating fruit, cheese, bread, and then frozen foods. So that sounds like a little bit like...
No, stay away from the preservatives and the frozen food will kill you. But yeah, if you were just to eat vegetables and chicken, that you'd probably have it 90% right. And if you can tolerate gluten, you're fine. And if you're moving a lot and need some exercise, you're fine with carbs. Okay. All right. Just real food. And it's really hard to eat at a restaurant. Okay. I know if you've ever been to a restaurant with me, and again, I have a Jewish background. So our people have a stereotype of being tough to eat out at a restaurant anyway, where the table's never right and we've got special orders and all that, but really difficult for me to eat at a restaurant because I'm trying to explain to the waiter and I'm like, look, take the asparagus and don't put any butter on it. I don't need just a little bit of pepper and cook it in olive oil, right? Or you explain it. If I'm going to order a filet at a restaurant, I'm like, I don't need half a stick of butter on it. Okay. Just make the filet just do it in olive oil. All right. A lot of that.
What are your thoughts on coconut oil?
I don't know a lot about coconut oil. My wife uses coconut oil. Genetically, I'm a Mediterranean person, being Jewish. I stick to fish, which is a good fat. I stick to avocado oil. I stick to olive oil.
You use ghee?
I do not use ghee. I think ghee is very fattening. I know that because I've got a friend who owns an Indian restaurant. And and the Indian food is a lot of ghee. I would have to research coconut oil, but I don't know. I think it's really just olive oil and avocado oil are the oils that I primarily use. It's really hard, especially in Houston. If you're eating out at a restaurant or Dallas or really anywhere or Atlanta or Chicago, fill in the blank. If you're in a big city where like casual dining, they are killing us with salt and butter. It's all it is. Salt, butter, and fat is what you're getting at a restaurant. And here's the good news. I don't mean to be like the Debbie Downer, or as my friend says, hey, Phil, you really crapped on my Ferrari. Look, you're allowed like 1 or 2 splurge meals a week. All right. If you're really disciplined, you can have 1 or 2 splurge meals, whatever the heck you want. All right. If you want to go eat, and you can eat all of it. If you want to go eat all the pizza you want on a Saturday night, go eat it. It's not that. It's so that's how you keep yourself mentally healthy. Otherwise, you'll go crazy. For me, it's dessert and ice cream. So once or twice a week, I'll just eat as much ice cream and chocolate as I want. Okay. Whatever. And diet is 80% of it. The American Cardiology Association, I think that's it.
Yeah.
They recommend that adults, you only need 150 minutes of moderately intense exercise a week. The exercise is such a small part of it. And that's basically 5 brisk walks for 30 minutes.
Yeah, and anyone who pays any attention, like anyone who has any like calorie tracker or anything like that, like on Apple Watch or anything, you'll see how many calories you're burning. Like if you're running, the amount you're burning is never going to make up for that chocolate bar you ate.
No, okay. All right. And let me just say this. There's always the morbidly obese, like really fat factor.
Yeah.
If you are so fat and just like you are borderline diabetic, you're better off on Ozempic. Ozempic may have crazy side effects and we don't know what it does for you. But if you're really if you're really diabetic, you've got serious health problems, you probably are better off just poisoning yourself with the Ozempic. Because it's like a risk reward thing, right? So
I like that sentence without the Ozempic at the end of it. If you're really fat, you got serious health problems, you're probably just better off poisoning yourself.
No, that's not what I mean. There should really be no more morbidly obese people left in America with Ozempic.
Like putting those two sentences together, you should just go poison yourself. There should really be no more morbidly obese people left in America. Oh no, Phil.
No, you need to be honest. That's my opinion. You don't know what it is, but it's better than becoming diabetic or dying. I guess you can die of diabetes or your kidneys shut down or something like that.
It literally has die as the first syllable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now look, most people just don't have the willpower to do what I just said. That you can try. That's beyond the scope of this question. But all right, that brings us to our final question. And this one is a legal question in episode 41.
Yeah.
What is a power of attorney?
A power of attorney is when you give someone the authority to do things on your behalf, to do legal things on your behalf. So
yeah. It's like if you're the person who wants to give authority to somebody else, you're called the principal. If you're the person that's getting the authority to do the things, okay, you're called the
agent.
Right. And the most common type of power of attorney in Texas is the
statutory durable power of attorney.
Right. And that's in the Texas Estates Code. It actually puts the form right in there for you. It's Texas Estates Code section 752.051. All right. And you just get the form and you check what you want the person to be able to do. Second most common power of attorney form is a
medical power of attorney, which is slightly different than an advance directive, but they're similar.
Yes. Medical power of attorney is if you give someone the authority to make decisions, whether to pull the plug or not, right? If you're on a machine and all that. Now let's talk about springing versus immediate. You can do a power of attorney, and most people really want them done as a springing power of attorney versus an immediate power of attorney. Talk to us a little bit about that, Austin.
Yeah. So an immediate power of attorney is if I work up on a statutory durable power of attorney, and there are like check boxes on there of the powers that you want people to have, or you could check at the bottom if you want them to have all of them, right? And I check at the bottom that I want Phil to have the authority to sell property I own, all that sort of stuff. And then at the bottom, it'll say whether you want it to go into effect now or upon some event like incapacity or something like that. If it goes into effect now, it's immediate. If it goes into effect upon incapacity or something else like that, then it's springing. It like springs on you when that thing happens.
Got it. And you really don't want an immediate. If you're in good health and you want to make all your decisions, you don't want someone else running around out there with the ability to make decisions for you, right? Typically. Now there's some exceptions, like if I've got a wealth manager or a financial planner and I want to give him power of attorney over my Fidelity account, for example, right? Because I want him to make trades for me and reposition and rebalance my portfolio. That's fine. But you probably don't want to give your 21-year-old son power of attorney over your real estate and your bank account, because that could go really badly. You probably want to wait until you've been incapacitated so that you give it to someone you trust who's able to make decisions for you. So, all right, that brings our show to a close. This was definitely a different show where we knocked out some legal questions, but we just also knocked out some kind of general interest questions. And I'm not saying we're qualified to answer those general interest questions, but
we're qualified.
I just woke up today and felt like answering some questions that I thought would help people. No one will probably listen to me as far as my advice goes on those general interest questions, but nonetheless, we did it. We did the service.
Yeah.
All right. I've been your host, Phil Silberman, and Austin Black has been my co-host. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. Nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice, and we need to expand on that one this time, Austin.
Also medical advice, though.
Medical advice, financial advice. Nothing in this show is to be considered any kind of advice. This has all been for entertainment purposes only. If you have a legal question, email us at info@silblawfirm.com, info@silblawfirm.com. And tell us you want it answered publicly in the podcast. We'll do our best to answer it. Everybody have a great rest of your week and weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.